To another meeting of the Broadband Governor's Task Force on Broadband Access. It's November 8th. Time flies. We've got some good presenters here today talking about permitting and locating. So stay tuned for that later in the agenda. But just as a first step here, we'll do our attendance and make sure we've got everybody checked in. And then I have a couple members of the PSC team we want to introduce you to. So I'll just start right at the top of the list here. I don't know why it's organized. I have it alphabetical by first name. So first I'll go with Angie Dickinson.
Good afternoon.
Hi, Angie. Thanks. Barbara Koldos.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Barbara. State Senator Brad Paff or any members of his staff. All right. Brett Shupner.
I'm here.
Hi, Brett. Brittany Beyer. Celeste Flynn. Chad Young.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Chad. Chris Herjong. Chris Meyer is not yet here. Doug Cox. Chet Streeb. Emily Dittmar, I'm sorry, Emily. She didn't hear me mispronounce.
Yes.
Oh,
I am
got
here, but thank you. Yes.
Gail Hike, I know Gail's feeling under the weather, so she might not be here. State Senator Howard Markline or any members of his staff. State Representative Jeffrey Mersaw or any members of his staff. Jennifer Schilling. Jose Martinez. I saw you, Jose. Hi, Jose.
Present. Hi there.
Justin Hebner.
Yep, I'm here.
Hi, Justin. Kwame Barnes. Lori Collins.
Hello.
Hi, Lori. Marta Bechtel.
I'm here.
State Representative Melissa Ratcliffe or any members of her staff.
Here.
Hi, Ben. I'll jump. Chris Meyer. Chair Chris Meyer is here, I see.
Just came in sideways. Glad to be here.
Got you down. Michelle Schuler. Rachel Shemlin.
Present.
Dr. Biko Baker. Russ Falkenberg. Sal Carranza.
Hey, Roy, I'm here.
Hi, Russ.
I'm here.
Hi, Sal. And Steve Schneider. No, Steve. Okay, did I miss anyone? I think I maybe saw Celeste flash on here along the way. Anyone else that I did not call your name, please?
Kathy Jennings.
Oh, Kathy, thanks. Kathy's one of our presenters today, so we'll introduce her in just a minute. But glad to have you here, Kathy. Thanks for joining us. All right, with that, I was going to maybe take the opportunity and introduce just a couple new members of the PSC team that we have. Some new hires coming on board, and we're really excited to have them on board. And I think you'll be seeing and hearing their faces and names more and more in the next couple months. So first, I'll maybe toss it to Christina Luna here. Christina, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Christina Luna. I am the Capital Projects Policy Analyst with the Broadband Office. I come here recently from Minneapolis. I just graduated with a public policy degree from the Humphrey School of Public Affairs. I'm from Wisconsin, so I'm glad to be back.
Thanks, Christina. We're glad to have you. Maybe I'll pass it now to TJ. TJ, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. Yeah, I just started after graduating from Columbia University's Public Policy School with my master's. Originally from Milwaukee area and went to UW-Madison undergrad and spent a lot of time in the finance industry and hoping to bring some of that expertise to the BEAD program.
Thanks, TJ. All right, and last but not least, we got Mark here as well. Mark, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Mark Leonard. I'm originally from the Dells, live in Sun Prairie. I got my undergrad from UW-Madison as well. I was just with the Ho-Chunk Nation for the last 2 years as Executive Director of Administration and leading the charge for their broadband project. So I'm also happy to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. Mark is kind of our successor to Jaron. He's got big shoes to fill, but he seems up to the task. So I think particularly with members of this task force, you're going to hear a lot more from Mark in the next couple months going forward. So please don't hesitate if you have questions or anything comes up. You can always shoot Mark an email. All right, with that, Chris, maybe we'll jump right into public comment.
Perfect.
All right, sounds good. So I'll just say now is the opportunity for members of the public. If you have a public comment, please feel free to make that comment now. This is really the sole opportunity for members of the public to make a comment. So please go ahead. I'll leave some space here if you'd like to make a comment. I just ask that it's brief and really pertain to the subject of broadband access that we're discussing here today. So with that, first step on public comment. All right, I'll ask just a second call for any public comments. All right, third and final call for any public comments. All right, great. Well, I will say the commission is always open to hearing any comments or feedback from members of the public. You're welcome to send an email to our state broadband office webpage. You can drop something in chat here today. Written public comment of any form is always really welcome. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any public comments. With that, maybe I will pass it on to Chris to take us through our agenda. Chris, want to take it away?
You bet. Thanks, Rory. And apologies, everybody. I was a little late. I let Rory know a few minutes before the meeting that he might have to start things without me, and I appreciate you doing that, Rory. So we have a couple of presentations lined up for today, some education for us. The presentation that we're going to have now is on permitting and locating related broadband expansion. We've got two presenters. We got Kathy Jennings from Wisconsin DOT Broadband Utility and Scott Nyman, CEO of Serenity Wittenberg Telephone Company.
Kathy and Scott? Sure, you want me to go ahead?
Yeah, I think we'll start with Kathy, and then once we're done with Kathy, we'll do Scott.
Okay.
Okay. So my name is Kathy Jennings. I've been the broadband coordinator for Wisconsin DOT for just over the past year. And one of my roles is to provide an annual notice to the broadband companies of Wisconsin departments' improvement projects, the 2-year, 4-year, and 6-year program. So hoping that there will be more of just a dig once to minimize excavation. The other part of my job does not involve dispersing money or grants, so I don't get many phone calls about that. I don't decide what location broadband companies put their fiber in. So basically my role here at DOT falls to permitting. So I have a couple slides put together. My resources that I bring along with me with permitting are each of the 5 regions. I'm not expecting anybody to read this, but it just shows part of the permitting process will give you a link on who to send the permit to. And this is what they'll see. And I have in each region a permitting coordinator. I'm at central office. So I deal more with interstates and the bigger highways, and each of the regions will deal with the permitting in their region. So I'm going to walk you quickly through. I just have a real short presentation and how we are going to guide people towards permitting. I feel like there's so many new players in this game with all this money coming out that they may not know that they need a permit or how to go about it. So the first place that they would go, they go to our website, and up here they would just, it's real simple. You type in permits. This is the first thing that pops up, and it will take you right to this screen, utility permits. And down here on the bottom is utility accommodation policy. That's one place you'll want to get there. I'm going to kind of show you there's several ways to get to the permit. There's not just one way to do it. So we'll get to the utility accommodation policy, and also further down on this page, sorry, they've got the forms here, the DT 1553 and the instructions on how to do it. So once you get to the utility accommodation policy, this is what you'll see. And further down on this page is where we want to direct these people. It's the permit process, application form, and instructions, and also the environmental coordination and checklist. To install broadband in Wisconsin right away, you'll have to have the DT 1553 and the environmental coordination checklist. Those two items, and there's links to each of them. And once you get to the first one, you'll start with a permit process, application form, and instructions. This will show you, tell you where to go, where the links are to get the exact form, and the DT 1553I is actually an informational sheet, which I'll kind of touch on later on in these slides. This is the DT 1553 form that the permitter will have to fill out. And you see on the bottom, it says checklist included. We won't even look at the permit application unless the checklist is included. And there's a link right here. So these two, there's links all over to make sure that these forms are easily accessible to the applicator. The next, this is the DT 1553I. It gives general instructions, and down here it says specific instructions for each form. So this form that I showed you before, it walks you through step by step. Box 6, this is what we need. Box 7, this is what we need. So the person should be able to read through this form and be able to fill out what we need. So once they actually go to these forms, it should be fairly straightforward on the information that we need. Otherwise, like I said earlier in my presentation, we have all these, each region has their permit coordinator. So really that's it in a nutshell. If you can just tell them these are the two forms and the environmental, these are the two forms that we'll need for broadband. Basically, that's about it. So if there's any questions, I'll take them. Otherwise, I will toss it back to you, Rory.
Thanks, Kathy. I think certainly we'll get a copy of these slides and make sure they're available for folks. I maybe can do one starter question while people are thinking. Can you tell us about kind of how someone will know the difference between when they need a DOT permit versus kind of a local government permit, and kind of what that line of jurisdiction is?
Absolutely. When they are on DOT right away, they'll need it. And when they're in the municipality, that's when they'll go directly to the municipality. So it all depends on right away and where they're located.
Okay, so for my very lay person here, forgive me for the silly question.
Oh, okay.
DOT right of way is usually like state highways,
Yes.
kind of county highways, or is that fuzzy?
No, it's sorry, Corey, Rory, you're right. It's state highways. So county highways, they'd go to the county. Local streets, they'd go to the local government. So
Okay.
it's just the state trunk highways and the interstates where they need to come to the state.
Okay, great. Thank you. Maybe I'll open up. Chris or anyone else have any questions for Kathy?
Anyone have questions for Kathy?
Also, we don't charge for permit applications, and we don't charge for installations. We used to charge $10,000 per mile along like the interstate, but because this is one of the governor's top 5 and some other, we don't charge for broadband installation anymore.
Kathy, I have one quick question. If we don't have any other questions from the group. I believe a number of years ago, the DOT on some road construction projects started installing conduit as sort of a default, so that there, even if there wasn't cable, there'd be conduit in place for cable to be pulled down the road, literally. Mm-hmm. Is that still a practice that the DOT is building that conduit capacity into the road construction?
That is a good question, Chris. Since I'm fairly new at this position, I would have to look into that. I'm not sure if it's standard practice or not, because there's so many people getting in on the broadband installation right now. They're just putting it in everywhere. So I can get back to you on that.
That's fine. Thank you, though. Any other questions for Kathy? Thanks. And if we could share that presentation with the group, Rory, I think that'll be helpful to be able to read through some of those policies and some of the information that was shared on the slides.
Yeah, Chris, what I usually do is after a task force meeting, I'll take kind of any of the relevant documents and we'll put them on that SharePoint so folks have access to that. So if anybody has trouble accessing their SharePoint, please let me or Mark know and we can help figure that out as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Kathy. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up then is Scott Nyman, CEO of Serenity Wittenberg Telephone Company. Scott, it's all yours.
Hey, all right. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, well, I was asked to join you all today on the task force and just kind of bring some discussion around the service provider side of what we're seeing out there as we're building these complex fiber broadband networks, and maybe speak to some of the permitting locating issues that we are seeing, as well as potentially have some high-level potential solutions. So we've been put to task to kind of work through that. But for those of you that don't know me, I'm Scott Nyman. I'm, as Chris alluded to, CEO of Wittenberg Telephone Serenity is how we operate now up here. I am also the WSTA president for this year. So we do have some other WSTA members on this task force. So I'm going to put them on the spot a little bit as well after I'm done yakking here to see if they have any input as to some of the things that they're seeing. I did talk to some of our other companies across the state to just kind of get a feel for how it's gone this year in the construction season of 2023, as we're nearing the end of it here now that we're only a week away from deer season. And that seems to be kind of like the cutoff every year of when the ground decides to freeze and makes it tough for us to continue to construct these networks. And I can say that overall as a whole this year, I think we have seen an improvement in some of the delays we have seen in years past, but there still are issues. Speaking for myself, most of our construction in the past 2 years have been expansion type construction, meaning we're building outside of our traditional area or footprint of Wittenberg Telephone Company. We're awarded state broadband grants in a lot of situations, or we worked with communities that have their own dollars they want to put towards construction, and we build in those areas. The past few years, we have had projects that have been affected by the delays that have really come from the locating side. For my case, and a lot of the companies I have talked to, permitting has gotten a lot better, and we haven't seen a whole lot of municipality DOT type permit issues. There have been a few small issues with railroads, which is another type of permit that we have to deal with in our constructions anytime we cross any rail systems out there. But the locating side continues to be an issue. We are all open for ears of anybody that has an idea how to fix that. We've had some ideas. I use a different contractor that's pretty new into the industry. They saw an opportunity with all this future funding coming, and they bought a smaller locating company and decided to expand it. So I had a conversation with them just yesterday, just around some of their concerns and what they're seeing as far as quantity of tickets, their ability to staff the positions that they need to staff, and any ideas they can think of around thinking outside of the box on how they could solve some of their own challenges. Some of the things we talked about, is having someone that manages those tickets at the level of the dispatch area that can prioritize locates and tasks. That still becomes a problem if you have a lot of them. As we talked about, and Kathy just talked about, there is a lot of construction going on. So a lot of area is being affected, needing to be located. The facilities have to be exposed and shown where they're at so these projects can go through. One of the things that I kind of learned in this process that I'm taking to heart is I know some of the construction crews that are out there will actually call in a locate just so they can see what facilities are in the area so they can engineer and prepare for construction in that area. And that's not really an effective way of, in my opinion, of doing that locate process, because now you're not really setting up to get out there and get the project done. You're more of just a visual inspection. So they end up calling that ticket in again a month later, and the locator gets a little bit frustrated because they were just there 30 days ago, and now they have to go back to a location and relocate. So we talked through some of those ideas and how we can maybe communicate the challenges that come with those type processes. We talked about temporary solutions, knowing that this funding isn't going to last forever. And they're open for any of those solutions. Some of the things we discussed were considering hiring, summer help, temporary staff which a lot of them do today. But finding those qualified staff to do those positions is still a challenge in their world. So there's lots of different ways we can go with this. I just wanted to kick it off with a little discussion on what I've been seeing and what I've been hearing from some of the other companies and things that I've been talking to. And I don't know if anyone, Chad, Justin, Angie, anyone wants to speak up and give their side of what they're seeing on the locate issues.
Sure, Scott, yeah,
Can
go
I-
ahead.
Just for people, for all us lay people, can you
Okay.
just help define, like, tell everyone what is a locate? Like, what are we locating? Where is it? Who owns it? Like, you know, I know about Digger's Hotline because I've had to put in a
Right.
fence. Can you just make sure, can you just do a little bit of like level setting for anyone who doesn't know
Sure,
what locate is and what we're locating?
absolutely. Yes, no problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Alyssa.
No.
Yeah, no. So the locate is, it's just that it can be anything from you're putting a mailbox on the end of your driveway to myself as Whitburn Telephone Company are burying 16 miles of fiber up a highway. To be able to go out and do that work that's going to be happening underground, meaning you're putting a post in for a mailbox, or you're going to bury underground fiber for 16 miles up a state highway, you have to call in a ticket to Digger's Hotline or 811 in the state of Wisconsin by law. That ticket is submitted into a system and it notifies all the utilities in that area that you are working, be it your driveway or that entire route up of the state highway I referenced earlier. So when that ticket comes in, the owner of those facilities, every utility, such as Whitburn Telephone Company, the gas company, the power company, the local water and sewer municipality is notified that something is going to be done underground at this location, and you have to give a clear description of what you're doing so they know how it's going to affect the local underground utilities in that area. When they get that ticket, they are required by law. Usually the ticket time frame is 5 working days to get located. You can do an emergency locate is what we call it. That's when you have a severe service affecting issue, such as a broken water line, a cut fiber optic cable in our world that needs to be repaired immediately. And you usually have up to 24 hours to get your facilities located in those type scenarios. So the utility then is required by law to go out and make sure they identify the location of their underground facilities, be it the fiber optic cable, the gas line, the water line, and everything like that. A lot of companies do it one of 2 different ways. They contract it out and they hire companies that have entered this space as a contract hire type company that will go out and locate for your company. We utilize that process here at Whitburn. We use a smaller contract locator to locate our facilities, or some other companies I have talked to actually have their own staff that go ahead and locate their own facilities out in the network. So that ticket that is generated has a dig start date on it, meaning, Whitburn is getting ready to start this project, or Justin's going to put in his mailbox on Saturday morning. It has a start date of when the work is going to be completed, and you have to have your utilities located by that time. What we've seen in the past few years is sometimes we show up and that dig start date is already expired, meaning we're by the process that is in place with Digger Hotline, which is currently under law. I am eligible to begin my work underground, and we find out that nothing has been located. So we don't want to create damage or create more of an issue. So we're holding up that construction process, trying to find the locator and make sure that everything is located so that we don't create more of an issue in this area. So it's kind of a long answer, but I hope that covers all the bases of how the process works. But just going back to some of the things we've seen as the utility side, and Chad sounded like he had some input to give, and I'll let Chad go first on how he's seeing things up there in northern Wisconsin, up in Novato.
Yeah, I think just like Scott, we see a lot of the same issues, and we have our own contracted locators, and we can kind of keep our thumb on our locator. so that we're ensuring that those are done in a timely fashion. But when the locate isn't done by another company, that's when we run into issues. And when they miss those timelines, it does set us back, because we don't want to go ahead and start digging, because the first thing that happens in the event of a cut cable is photographs are taken and people want to know if you were digging within the locate area. Did you pothole? Did you do all the things that you need to do? And so it definitely sets us back. And honestly, there's companies that I know that have dug without it being located, and then you have cut cables and service affecting issues and those type of things. And that's why it's important to keep on top of those locating issues. And we definitely have seen more of those, I would say, the past year or two than we had seen in the past. And some of the reasons that we've heard is that some of the larger locating companies have been losing staff, or they have a hard time hiring employees, and so they're falling behind on the workload that they have. And so that's what's causing, I think, a lot of those issues. But locating certainly a major one, because you get out to the site and you find that it hasn't been located. And so your resources are deployed at that time and ready to start, and you can't. And so you have to figure out what else are we going to do with those crews for the day. But locating isn't our only issue. Like Scott mentioned, there's railroad issues. Those are always difficult to solve. Here in the great Northwoods of Wisconsin, we do have wetlands and National Park Service. And I can tell you, we had 2 projects delayed by up to a year. In one instance, it was because there wasn't a general wetland permit in place between the United States Army Corps of Engineers and a tribal entity. And so we actually had to hire a consultant. We had to conduct a comprehensive wetland impact assessment and, work with the Wisconsin DNR to get that approved. And that takes quite a while to go through those type of issues. And similar type of permitting issue with the National Park Service, where we had a river crossing. And so those are just some of the things that, when in our very short construction season, which is 5 to 6 months at best, a 3-month delay is a showstopper. And so we're always trying to get better with those things. And I have a team of engineers, and this is one of the things that they work on daily, is just permitting. And so it's a sizable topic.
Angie, do you have any input?
Sure. Thank you, Scott. For TDS and talking to our folks, when you think about the consequences of delayed locates, that is what our team was discussing, particularly when we're looking at projects funded with federal or state grant dollars, where we are under a contractual obligation to complete a project by a certain time. Our contractors that we work with have obligations to our company to complete the work, but there's really no obligation that's enforceable with the locators. And when you think about all of the work that is heading our way, I'm grateful that we're having this conversation here today, because it ultimately impacts the ability of the state to reach its goal with the BEAD funding or with other state grant dollars. So I'm happy that we're having this conversation. Thanks.
Justin, you have any input?
Well, just a couple of things. I mean, I won't cover anything we already haven't covered, but this time of year, I always think about the fact that a lot of this stuff changes when we get to October 31st as well. So, as Chad said, a lot of times our build is based on weather, but there's also changes in the rules after you get past certain dates. So as an example, we had a railroad crossing that we were hoping to get done, last month, but with all the rain that we had, it wasn't possible because of some wetland issues. But in this example now, the cost of the railroad crossing and the cost of the flagger quadrupled in price because we went past October 31st. And so it's ultimately trying to figure out who you're dealing with at all the different levels. Because again, most of our projects aren't, they may run on some state highways, and they may hit some county highways, and we may be dealing with some municipalities. There's some municipalities that will have hard cutoffs on when you can still be doing facilities in the ground. Marshfield, as an example, October 31st is kind of the cutoff in that example. And again, that's to protect them, that a project doesn't get stranded, half done as you're going into winter. But there's just a lot of specificity that you have to cover. And then there's also increased cost if, one of those things, and all this is weather reliant, leads to delays, which then, changes permitting or has to, we have to pull new permits in those situations. So it sounds, I think it's even just crazy. Like if you visualize some of this stuff, we had a fiber cut this last year. So a locate was off by less than 2 feet, but they were boring underneath a county highway. And again, this is very unlucky, but in that situation, they're boring down underneath the highway. They hit our fiber right in the middle of the highway at the exact same height, cut it, and then, we're having to, overnight have to pull through fiber and rebore that and everything that happens, all because the locate was off by 2 feet, and we just got very unlucky in that situation. But we had, almost 150 customers without service during that situation, which is one of the worst possible things that can happen because it's under the road. We can't access where the cut actually happened in that example. So, that's what can happen badly if things don't go right with the locate. So it's, again, it's simple if you think about it step by step, but it's complicated because all the steps are interrelated, and you're often dealing with multiple entities to do a single fiber project because you're crossing railroads, you're on state, county, and municipal areas. But so that's all I would add.
Yeah, no, that's well said. Good input. So yeah, I think that's kind of summarizes everything that we're seeing as service providers. It was mentioned earlier too. I think Chad mentioned it. The people that don't call in the locate can be a problem as well. So I unfortunately have that story from the summer, and I bring up the mailbox because it was a mailbox that was getting changed on a Saturday, and the homeowner didn't know to call in a locate, and their friend came over with a post hole digger on a tractor, and they went right, of course, centered on our fiber optic cables. So it turned into a big ordeal, and we got it fixed over the weekend. But it was a hard lesson to learn for that homeowner on how the locate process should work. Though Digger's Hotline does a great job of advertising on the radio, on TV. We do on our social medias in the spring to remind everyone as you're doing those summer projects, please make sure you call us. We want to locate it. We want to find it before you find it is our goal. So
that's a good point, Scott. That's why those laws are in place. I think we all have stories about somebody setting a fence or a mailbox or whatever it might be, and that's a $15,000 repair. If you nick that fiber. So yep.
Yeah, the homeowner was shocked. Yeah.
Does anyone have any questions for Scott or any of the other folks who chimed in on this conversation?
Yeah, I do. This is Brett from Reedsburg Utility / Lightspeed. And I guess one thing I don't know if you want to consider as the task force when they do the final report is, regarding the locates not getting done. So state statute does have some enforcement action that can be done, I believe, by the PSC if it's a hazardous material. So natural gas and stuff like that, or maybe electricity. I don't know if that would fall into it or not. But when it comes to telecommunication locates and that, there is no enforcement action that either Digger's Hotline or the state of Wisconsin has. And we've battled this locating issue for the last few years. Nobody's calling anybody by names, but I can definitely tell you who the culprits are. But we've actually had to take legal action against some of these other providers because they just basically aren't doing their job and what's required by state code. But the problem is there's no enforcement action in that code. So maybe that's something that should be considered as a recommendation that, when the providers are not getting the locates done by the 3-day required period, that there's some sort of enforcement action that doesn't require having to go through your local county district attorney to actually have some enforcement done.
Other questions, comments?
Can I chime in here too? This is Russ.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to echo what everybody has been saying. We have lost thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars over the last few years waiting on locates to be done. And anything that we can do to help with enforcement action or forcing somebody's hand, we would love to play a part in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments, questions?
I have a quick question. Maybe it's a hopeful question. For Scott, and I guess the whole team, everybody's talking here, a lot of expertise on the call. You know, have you seen over time any new technology or kind of better, you know, GIS or mapping practices having any impact on locates? And do you see there's hope for the future if there's some new technology that might come in and help with that? Maybe you can talk about anything you've seen on that front.
I myself haven't, still the old clip on the cable and find it with the receiver locate technology that our locator is using, that when I was a technician 15, 20 years ago, I was using. You know, we go to trade shows often. There are improvements trying to be made around that. I think the better we make mapping, the better that will help. And we've made improvements there. There's still a ways to go, but everybody's, you know, fighting that fight on all fronts all the way to the federal level. And I think that's going to help. And obviously the locators have the equipment that they utilize today is a lot better than it used to be, as far as, you know, bleeding over to other cables so you mislocate and things like that. So I haven't seen anything outside the box that's new and inventive. If you have something in mind, Rory, I would love to get on that path with you if we want to go do it.
Maybe some wishful thinking. It sounds like incremental change is all that's going on, at least at this point.
It is, yes.
Yeah. And Scott's right. I mean, a lot of it comes down to an experienced locator is much better than an inexperienced locator. So there is different levels of quality when they're doing those locates too.
Scott, could you talk about why somebody does, I don't know what you called it, but it sounded almost like a fake locate call to figure out who was in the area? Like, is there not a map that you could look at? Is there not a way that you can find out who's in the area without having to do a locate?
I guess the short answer to that was the example that I gave in that one. We knew we were expanding into an area, and the engineer for my project actually knew the other company was in the area, but we didn't know which side of the road they were on. We didn't know, you know, where they crossed the highway, where they did some of these river and creek crossings that we want to look at for our project. So they did call in an engineering type locate on a low priority to go have that so they could drive the route and see where the cable is. So when they engineer my project that is going to go through there, they know to stay on the other side of the road in this section, to bore the creek on the other side of the road and maybe not the other side. So we talked about that a little bit, and that was more of a complaint from my locator than I think from anyone else, because he was hearing from his locators that they were frustrated to go locate, and then when they actually engineered the project and we went out to construct it, he had to locate it again, and it was a repeat type work. And that's certainly something we're talking about and trying to figure out how we can prevent that from happening, because we know with $1 billion coming in BEAD that, you know, we can't have double locates out there on projects.
Thanks, that's helpful.
Okay. The problem that comes into play with you know, to us that are following the rules and getting the locates done in the 3 days, like in Scott's scenario, there is, okay, we sent our guys, had to pay our guys to do the locates, but the others didn't do the locates. So then these locates get recalled in because they didn't get done by the other companies. So we're paying our guys twice to go locate these. So it keeps driving our costs way up. And I think what you're referring to is a planning locate, which is the locators have, or the companies have 10 days to complete those locates. So it's a longer time period. It's not as time critical for construction purposes. But what we're seeing is that these other companies don't even complete the planning locates. So how companies are working around it is calling in an actual locate. which has to be done within 3 days. And then that just drives up costs for everybody.
Barb?
Hi, so I am not a technician, so maybe this is a dumb question. But trying to understand locates and the process that you have to go through, who is the accounting or who's holding these locators accountable or making sure they're doing what they need to do? You know, who's confirming? I don't know if that's the right word. I guess, you know, once they do their job, you know, who's making sure that they're doing it correctly besides the providers?
Well, the best answer to that is, and then Chad had put this out a little bit as well, is it's on the utility to make sure their facilities are located. If you choose to use a contract locator, that's fine, but you need to follow up and make sure that that locating is happening. In our case, we are on top of our locator regularly, making sure our locates are completed on time. You know, if they're done in error, we find out why and fix that problem. So, you know, the problem locates we have out there, it could be a contractor that we're upset about, but the ultimate responsibility of who's making sure is located is who owns that facility. What is the company that owns that utility that is underground? By the legislation and the law today, you are responsible as the owner to locate your cable when that ticket is called in.
And there's just a little bit of a paradox now, because ultimately we're very interested in making sure our fiber is properly located, because if it gets cut, we're going to have a lot of people without service, or we're going to have a main line to an area. But there is a lot of old metallic cable that's in the ground where in certain situations, the cost to locate it all the time has been deemed to be more expensive than just letting it get cut and fixing it if it matters in that situation. So, you know, the onus is on the provider, but there's some providers that are doing mental math saying that I'd rather just deal with, you know, the bad outcomes because it's old metallic cable that not very many people are still on, or nobody's on that metallic cable, that I won't locate it in that situation. But that still holds up the project in that situation, because we have to, you know, wait for that locate to happen so that we can be sure that we're not doing that. And so it's a weird paradox, because ultimately the cost of making sure your facilities stay intact is less valuable based on if those facilities are very old and or not very utilized anymore, you know?
Right.
Any other discussion?
I'm sorry, this is it's me again. So I'm trying to understand. So if they refuse to do it, then Justin, then who, you know, are they fined? There's okay.
No.
Yeah,
No,
not today.
Yeah. Yeah, not
I'm sorry.
today.
I'm sorry for these dumb questions. I don't know the
No,
They're
process.
not.
So thank
No,
you. I
they're
appreciate
not
it.
dumb questions at all. They're showing the frustrations and what we're seeing out there, you know, and what's causing delays in these projects. So they're good questions, and that's what Brett was alluding to earlier. Is, you know, if this task force is gonna recommend a change or something down the line to the legislation side, we got to make that enforceable, and you know, make sure that that owner of the facilities is doing what they are required to do in this process.
And I think the only other thing to consider is, do certain owners want to forego, like, is there an opt-out box in that situation? Like, if you were to allow certain providers to not locate because it doesn't matter to them, I mean, that may allow for some of this to get better. The bad news is that there could be a handful of customers that are adversely impacted, that again, when that decision is made at a very high level, it's not a big deal that 3 people are going to lose service in comparison to spending tens and hundreds of $1,000s on locates. But at some point, that may be something that we would have to look at. Is there an opt out that I don't care about those facilities anymore? And there's been some companies that have taken some actions, even donating their drops to their customers so that they don't own those drops anymore, and therefore they don't have to, you know, really pay attention anymore. But
Rachel?
I had a follow-up question. So when somebody calls Diggers Hotline for a fiber project, you know, for the engineering planning portion, it's a longer time period. Do different locators come out to locate different utilities, or is it one locator that comes out and flags all the utilities at the same time? Again, I know it's a basic question, but I don't know.
It's a good question, and I don't. The best answer to that is it depends on the utilities. There is one contract locator in our area that locates for the power company, the gas company, and the telecommunications company in our expansion area. So in that scenario, they use the same contract locator. So he or she has, the different colors of paint required to locate all the different utilities. In our case, my locator only locates my stuff when they go out. So it really depends on the scenario of who the owner of that facility has contracted to locate, or if they do it themselves.
So could there be a scenario where a landowner has buried utilities, but on the map they're listed as like overhead, I don't know what it's called, pole attachment utilities or something, and then it would just they wouldn't even come out and flag it, that would cause an accident or a problem for the company that's putting in the new fiber? Or is that more of a mapping thing?
Yeah, that could happen. But what you're supposed to do as part of the rules of the locate is, if you don't have facilities in that area, or if you move them to the pole in that scenario and they used to be buried, say you put fiber now new in the air attached to a pole, and you have old copper in the ground from 50 years ago that you're still utilizing, or you have abandoned and not utilizing, so you're not worried about locating, you're supposed to put an all clear flag. It's a little white flag that says all our facilities are clear by the rules of your locate ticket. You don't got to worry about my stuff. But what we do find is the locators typically just don't even go out, or they'll call, because you have to have a contact number on that ticket. So for my locating company, when it's an area that we have some aerial and they know they don't need to go on that, rather than driving a truck out there to put a flag in the yard, they'll contact the caller of that ticket and let them know their facilities are clear.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Great discussion. Any more? Awesome. Well, thank you, Scott, for your presentation today as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you for all the great discussion. Moving on in our agenda, item number 4 is a group discussion. Rory, are you going to lead us off with that?
Yeah, I think, we've got kind of a set of 4 questions, and I think, Kristen, are you able to share your screen?
I am, yes. And I've also got them in the chat for those who can't access Google. So I'm going to put a couple of ways to access the questions. Chat, and then I'm also dropping a link to the Google Slides, and I will share my screen with those slides. Great. And originally, and can you see here? Are you seeing the slide?
Yeah.
Okay, if you're not seeing that, you're seeing my email. So originally, I think we were going to go through these one by one, but as I am listening to the discussion, this is such a holistic discussion of locating and our previous presentation on permitting that I thought perhaps we would start out by tackling all 3 at once, just kind of as the conversation flows naturally. The 4th question is your organization involved in permitting? So that is not so much a discussion question, but a yes or no question. But as we're looking towards making these processes as easy as possible, or improving them to maybe make them a little bit easier and a little bit more consistent, we're curious, are there some best practices which are successful in preventing permitting delays? Are there things that you've noticed or you've observed or things you've experienced that have helped prevent, or maybe your organization practices that help prevent delays in permitting? That's our first question. Our second question, as we plan for BEAD deployment, are there policy changes that you would recommend to improve permitting and locating issues? We've talked on some of them, but I think this is a really robust discussion, and we've probably still got quite a bit of meat on the bones in terms of what we could be doing. And then third, is there anything else that the broadband office should do to facilitate and support permitting and locating? And each one of these questions, if you're interested in taking notes as we're going along, as some of us will be doing, will be on their individual slides. So for now, I'm just going to keep it on this, but if you're on the Google document, please feel free to fill those in. If you're not able to access the Google document and you have comments you'd like to write, then feel free to put those in the chat and I'll transfer them over after we're done today. So with that, let's open up discussion. What do you guys think? Does anyone have anything that or experience they had, which was particularly, I'll use the term slick, in terms of facilitating a smooth permitting and locating process, or worked with an organization that had a particular way of going about things that really facilitated that process?
Well, this is Sal. For what I heard, I think the biggest thing would be some legislation that would create accountability for providers that do not do what they're supposed to do, with some teeth, so that they get some fines to make it a better deal for them to actually do what they're supposed to do than to just ignore it and you know, and not provide the opportunity in the way they should be doing it. That's what I heard. So I don't know if how possible that is, how much political will there would be in the legislature to do that, but it would be worth to look into it. That's my sense.
Thank you, Sal. Yeah, we definitely, it sounds like this is more of a widespread problem than, and I admittedly am on the outside, than I would have predicted. What are your other thoughts?
Kristen, this is Chad. You know, I guess I'll start by saying, you know, this is a nationwide issue. I don't think that this is singular to Wisconsin, and I certainly had a lot of these same issues when I worked out in Maine. But I guess I separate this into sort of two different issues. One is locating and one is permitting. And locating, I think, like we discussed, there really aren't any teeth, if you want to call it that, to the locating process. And I guess it's not a bad idea to put some teeth to locating, but at the same time, I do have to caution that ultimately what's going to happen is that there needs to be a process for submitting a missed locate, proving that the locate was missed, and then what is compensation or you know, what exactly would happen if that locate isn't done. And I suspect, just from most of us using contractors for our locates, that our locating cost is going to go up as a direct result of something like that. So there's a upside and a downside, I think, to, as with all legislation, to putting something in place that has some teeth. With respect to permitting, I mean, there's just enough different entities that are involved in permitting, whether it's railroads, whether it's DNR, whether it's national parks, whether it's county or local. It's a difficult one, but I know that something that has been a great help to our company has been our partnership with the counties and the towns that we work with. And I know, for example, in this latest round of grant awards, you know, that there's additional points for support, for example, from the local communities or municipalities. And I think one of the things that perhaps could receive some weight would be a pledge or a commitment by the county or municipality that they will assist with permitting issues. Because when we've had them, they can be incredibly helpful by making a couple of phone calls on our behalf to try to cure some of those permitting issues. So don't necessarily have a cure, but those are a couple of ideas.
Pledge is a proactive kind of, here's how we're going to work together. That's great.
Yep.
Yeah. Brett, I see your hand up.
Yeah, and I guess just kind of one thing that kind of wraps the two together, and what we're seeing in some of our recent DOT permit applications is that they're really requiring, and I don't know if Kathy's still on or not, but really requiring that we have to also show all the other utilities that are located within that DOT right away. So that kind of comes back to the planning locates. You know, we're not planning on digging at that time, but we need to know what other facilities are in the ground along that DOT highway where we're applying for a permit. Well, the only way we can get that is by having that located. And once again, that's something that we just really struggle with to get planning locates completed, is that the other providers aren't locating their facilities. So so that is one area where these two issues do kind of come into play together, is that you know, it's hard for us to submit our DOT permits and get those approved when we can't put all the data on there that the DOT is requesting. So just kind of throwing that out there for food for thought.
Hi, Brett. This is Kathy Jennings. Yeah, that's a real problem for not just you, for everyone, because these locators are so busy. They have 3 days to locate here, here, and here, and they just kind of toss the planning permit locates on the side. So that's a huge issue, and that's the question: is how can we get these planning locates to be as important as the other locates, because we do need to know the other. It's always been required to have the other utilities, existing utilities, on the plans, so when you're putting in a new utility, we know where there's any conflicts and such. But that's a huge issue. And I was at a utility conference the past 2 days, and from what I understand, Diggers Hotline is putting together a coalition to try to work through this problem also. So they're talking about a lot of the same issues that we brought up today, trying to get more teeth and behind the statutes and trying to get these locators accountable. So yeah, it's a real issue, Brett, and you're not the only one having it. We're going to work hard to try and figure something out. It's going to take some time, but like I said, Diggers Hotline is having their first meeting this month, kicking off basically issues like this.
Okay, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Celeste.
So, first of all, I'm the first to admit that I am not the subject matter expert on this topic, but I do know it's something that I've heard in other states as well. I would ask that if we do that, we really like. I would like an opportunity to take these questions back to our construction folks to just kind of see what they're dealing with. I do know that, for instance, our RDOF people were at that conference that was just referenced over the past 2 days. You know, but once you start putting stuff in legislation, like, you know, you have to answer. We need to give it enough flexibility so that they're not tied to the problems that I've heard, for instance, are like locates are getting called in for like, you know, 30 miles and then they expire. So they're having to go back and locate. And, you know, so it's like, you know, you're not going to build 30 miles, but they're locating for the same exact areas, which is causing delays. And so I do think that the people there's a lot of stakeholders that need to have some kind of input in it as it relates to this topic. And so I just think an opportunity to have people in a room that are actually dealing with these real issues every day can kind of get together and see if they can come to some kind of, you know, resolution, because we're all in the right of way. You know, there's so much activity, and I think with just driving, it's only going to get worse. So yeah, I think this is definitely a top 5 topic for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Celeste, to get some feedback, especially from those experts on your team dealing with this every day. I also heard railroads mentioned a couple times, and I'm wondering if, you know, some conversations with the commissioner of railroads or reaching out to them to, first of all, quantify and better understand what the issues you are having with railroads. Having dealt with railroads as mayor with railroad crossings, I know that the railroads are a totally different animal that kind of are one-off to everything we do. There might be something there we could follow up on at a future meeting too. Barb, you have your hand up.
Hi, it's me again. So this is more so asking because as a region, so working regionally in Northeast Wisconsin, working between county lines, you know, understand the process with DOT but when we work with municipality to municipality, I don't think permitting is one of those things that every county and every municipality has the same language.
Oh.
Okay, so good. I'm on.
Yep.
Again, I'm like Celeste, like not an expert, know enough. So I guess my question is, if there's anything we can maybe learn, or maybe best practices, is what kind of framework or what kind of consistent language can we help create or provide or share with our local municipalities when it comes to like permitting? Maybe particularly for as we, deploy these broadband dollars, these BEAD funds, would be helpful, I think, for our local municipalities.
Thank you. That's a great comment. Yeah. Other comments that we've got? Seeing none, I think we're about at the end of our discussion time for this topic today. So thank you all very much for your participation. These are incredibly valuable comments. I certainly learned a lot today. And I'm sure that for those of you who are also on the call that are a little bit outside of these processes learned as well. So thank you for sharing, for those of you that did, and thank you for your comments. Back to you, Chris.
Oh, can I hop in quick, Chris?
You bet.
I think to Celeste's question, I think we'll send these questions out after in kind of a homework. So we know not all task force members are here today. So if you have more information, more things to add, Celeste or others, please feel free to fill that all in when we send out these questions after the meeting, and we'll aggregate that and use that as we get closer and closer to the next task force report.
All right. Item number 5 is PSC updates. I know you were introducing some new team members when I joined, Rory. I wasn't sure if you jumped ahead to this item or if you had some additional updates for us.
No, we have plenty of updates. Maybe I'll go first, and then Alyssa will follow up. I think, everything is happening all at once here at the commission these days, but I'll start by talking about our capital projects fund grant round. Just yesterday, just about 24 hours ago, our grant round our applications closed for the capital projects grant round. That's a $42 million pot of money that we have coming in from some pandemic relief legislation, kind of through Department of Treasury, that the state is going to administer. Really, capital projects fund is broadband infrastructure grants are focused on building primarily fiber deployments. There's a preference for fiber there. In areas of the state that lack access to 100 by 20 wireline internet. So certainly lots of opportunities throughout the state. And I will say we saw a lot of demand. I think I was trying to do the math. I think the last time, the ratio of requests to funding available is actually potentially the highest it's ever been, except for maybe the first grant round when we had only $500,000 to award. And so we received $221 million of requests across 124 grant applications. I'm going to try and share my screen. My GIS team has been diligent and speedy in their work over the last 24 hours. And so we've got really an initial map of where those applications are. I'm going to show you if you can see that. All right. Is that screen sharing okay?
Yes.
Good. So, I mean, it's a lot of applications spread all over the state. We're really excited. I think, lots of reading and sifting and winnowing to do with these grants now. We'll be posting this map and some other summary information on the website shortly, but just wanted to say thanks to members on this call. I know we certainly have had a lot of engagement from you all stakeholders on this call, some applications from some of the providers on this call, as well as, a lot of planning and capacity building and expertise to get us over the finish line here. So a little bit of a celebration for this group. I think a great milestone to see this many applications come in. And I think it proves the point that there is no shortage of demand and need for more broadband deployment in this state. And I think we're really excited about the capital projects program. It's going to be a little bit more focused on finding ways to fit some of the affordability needs and making sure that projects are built and offering affordable broadband service, and also really attacking some of the problems that we saw were really chronic problems during the pandemic of, inability to access work opportunities, health monitoring opportunities, education and other things. So just maybe a little bit of a victory lap here for the commission and also all the folks on this call, and then a little bit of a rally of we've got more work to do. Certainly there's a lot of applications and we love to see lots of applications, but we want to fund as many as we can. And so this is just one step in that direction. maybe I'll open the floor if anybody has any quick questions about capital projects. Otherwise I can keep us moving and pass this along to Alyssa.
This is Sal. Noting on your map, there's a lot of areas up north where there were no applications. The areas that I would assume would probably require more support.
Yeah.
And I wonder, is there a reason why that would have happened? I mean, we see Price, Oneida, Forest, you know, all those areas, and some had only like one application. Any reason that you think there was difficulty in applying? Why do you think that happened?
It's a good question. It's a question I feel like we wrangle with every day at the commission is, you know, putting money out and making it available is not sufficient. We need to make sure folks have the ability to apply for and participate in the program. I think you're right. Like I haven't overlaid this map yet with like our availability coverage map, but certainly there are some counties there that have very poor service that maybe would do well to get some grant funding. I think it's a tough situation, particularly with these federal grant programs that we're starting to implement. It's harder and harder for folks to participate sometimes because there's a lot of complexity in federal law requirements.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
I think you said that yourself. I think finding ways, we're going to work to find ways to reduce that complexity and increase that opportunity for participation. But that's maybe one possible reason. Certainly, it's this difficult chicken and egg question of there's no internet service providers in the area. That's why they still need service. And if you need an internet service provider to apply for a grant, you know, which comes first, the provider in the area or the service? And so it's a little bit tricky, but I think it's something we continue to navigate.
Exactly. As we had thought from the beginning of our first year, we talk about navigators that would support, you know, municipalities or counties into how to apply, how to understand all those legal requirements that you're talking about. Because many times they don't have the staff or the resources to be able to apply. It's not that they wouldn't want to apply. And those are the ones who need it the most, that have the least resources to be able to apply for those grants. So that's something that we might have to think about. How can we make sure that if they are interested and they really need it, that they have the support to be able to apply, understand the rules, and be able to apply.
Absolutely, Sal. Thanks for the comments. I think certainly a theme in some of our prior task force reports and something we can continue to carry forward. I think in my view, since I've been at the commission, I think things are getting better. I think there's more of that capacity, and local units of government are finding ways to help, you know, access some of that navigator type expertise by hiring on their own staff. Certainly, University of Wisconsin Extension is on the call here. We've got some great extension staff who've been doing a lot of this work, as well as Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation and kind of some of our economic development regional partners. So there's all these different pieces to the puzzles and tools in our toolkit. But you're right. I think almost never enough local capacity when we're talking about broadband grants. So thanks. I think certainly a point of discussion for our next report.
Hey, two other thoughts on that quickly. And I know we've got a couple of providers from the northern half of Wisconsin on the task force, and they are far better, more expert at this than I am. But I know that when we get to the northern part of Wisconsin, we have two additional barriers. One is the density, right? You have less opportunity to have people uptake your fiber per mile. And the other is geography. You know, down in Adams County, you can dig a 6-foot deep trench with a shovel by yourself. But if you get up in northern Wisconsin, you hit bedrock pretty quick. So it becomes more expensive to deploy. And I suspect a lot of our conversation today comes into play too with permitting, especially with more rivers, lakes, national parks and forests to navigate and run fiber through. So I don't know if any of our other providers have some feedback on Sal's question, but I suspect those are some of the variables that make things more difficult in northern Wisconsin.
You know, Chris, I can speak to that a little bit, just because here, being in the Northwoods, and you know, we have a lot of experience mapping out some of the potential projects in some of these different areas. I mean, there's a few issues. You raised probably the largest one, and that's really density. And when you're looking at an area and you're seeing 4 to 5 people per square mile, that's a very, very difficult business case when you can really only expect about a 50% penetration. So you might get 2 people taking service in 1 mile, and that's costing you $75,000 to just construct to those 2 homes. And a lot of these areas that are uncovered in the Northwoods, it's going to take rather large projects in order to serve some of those areas. And in a capital projects fund round where there's 42 million available, from a provider perspective, I don't really see the sense in putting a $20 million application in. And so that's difficult as well. And quite honestly, in this last round, you'll see a lot of the projects that our company submitted, they were really phase 2 type projects. In other words, we've constructed one phase, and now we're looking to continue to build out from there. But it doesn't make sense for us to hop a county over and have a pocket of customers, because that causes us fits in terms of operational issues, such as, you know, I have to have a technician run an hour and a half away, maybe to take care of a trouble or something, and it's a real draw on your resources. So it's difficult, and even with BEAD coming down, I can tell you 25% requirement out of providers is going to be a tough hill to climb. And that's really where I think the commission's statements about some of the high cost locations and things like that are going to come into play. So.
Thanks, Chad.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, thanks for the conversation. I think you guys are laser focused on a lot of the things we think about here in the commission day to day. So with that, maybe a great pivot. Chad teed up for us to talk a little bit about BEAD. I'll pass that to Alyssa.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to give the task force some updates on BEAD. And so if you remember in our October meeting, we kind of walked through this, it's called Initial Proposal Volume 1. So kind of the state challenge process. And so that had just gone out for public comment. The public comments closed mid-October. It was at the commission just last Friday. Sorry, the weeks are very fuzzy. And the commission basically reviewed the public comments. We had public comments about sort of the nature of the challenge process, the way we were identifying community anchor institutions. The commission decided to make some changes to some of those public comments, and then also just instructed staff to continue to work with NTIA to submit it. I can really happily report that Volume 1 was submitted by the commission today. So it is now with NTIA for review and approval. So it was out for public comment, up to our commission. And so Volume 1, and that's sort of half of the BEAD proposal. Actually, I should not say half. It's like 10% of the BEAD proposal is submitted to NTIA. some percent, I don't know. But
don't say 10. My heart can't take it.
I don't know. It's a portion. It's 4 of the 19.5 requirements. And so Volume 2 of BEAD, so this is the initial proposal. This is the mechanics of how subgranting works. This is the details related to how the state intends to meet the requirements, the federal requirements related to scoring, to climate resiliency, to labor practices, to a low-cost plan. The commission will put that out for comment in what I am saying is early November. And if you're looking at the calendar, you can know early November is very, very soon. But I just wanted to spend a little time talking with the task force today that the document is long and it's relatively complex because there's a lot of federal requirements. But I wanted to talk through some of the ways, or many of the ways, that the task force recommendations are kind of showing through this BEAD Volume 2. And so some of the key recommendations of the task force are really about maximizing those federal dollars and absolutely expanding the dollars to reach the most unserved first and to sort of get the best bang for our buck. And one of the things the task force has talked a lot about and made recommendations on is sort of this idea that really resonates or is reflected in BEAD, being a little bit more technology aware, considering the performance of the infrastructure and the longevity. And you'll see that in BEAD, that's called a priority versus a non-priority project. Another thing that the task force has talked a lot about is that it's not just the infrastructure, but it's also the affordability of the infrastructure. And so BEAD has a required low-cost program. It has a middle-class affordability strategy. So it has a lot of places where staff have been able to take some of those task force recommendations and those things from the 5-year plan and sort of propose them into action. Again, volume 2 will come out as a draft. It's a draft. It goes out for 30 days. But I just, as folks see it later in the week or early next week, I hope you see a lot of the recommendations that like, oh yeah, we said affordability is important. I see it here on the score. Oh yeah, we said like, how do you really maximize these dollars, or how do you put in sort of the right dollars, or how do you make sure that for those really high cost, really scarce, really sparse locations, you get the right amount of money to incent people to build there. And so there's a lot of details, strategies, and also because it's a federal document, or it's a document that's going to a federal document, there's quite a bit of what I would say is redundancy to make sure we're meeting the requirements. And so I just wanted to sort of preview some of that for the task force, because in particular, right now we're not scheduled to have a December meeting. And so it will come out in early November, and it will have a 30-day comment, and then it will go to the commission during an open meeting. And then it will be submitted to NTIA no later than December 27th at 11:59 p.m. And maybe exactly that time for all we know. But that is, I just wanted to make sure people are kind of in the loop on what's happening with BEAD. And as they see that volume 2, hopefully you'll have a lot of opportunities to see places that some of the task force recommendations and some of the task force from both this last year, but even prior years, about speed and affordability and sort of how you target dollars and how do you really maximize those federal dollars. And so I just wanted to make sure task force members were kind of in the loop about the BEAD plan and where we are in the process. It might feel like we've been talking about this forever. I do think it will start feeling very fast soon, if it doesn't already. It will be, you know, is once volume 2's in, you know, we start our challenge, and it just sort of keeps going, and it will be a very, and again, once volume 2 is approved, the state has 12 months to sub-grant our BEAD dollars. So, you know, 18 months from now, we will be at sort of finalizing BEAD. Maybe. No one's recording me, right? So I just wanted to give that quick update on BEAD and the federal process, and make sure people knew where staff were in the process, and that they should expect to see a document out for public comment soon. Any questions on BEAD or the initial proposal? I think our FPO is on. Kara, or maybe she's not anymore. I'm going to call her out.
Alyssa, I just wanted to make a comment that I was hoping, you said December 27th, and I was hoping you guys would be done before Christmas. So I'm going to still keep my fingers crossed so you guys can enjoy it, because you so deserve it.
I think that sounds like a formal recommendation from the task force that we should submit it before Christmas. I think we can run with that, Alyssa.
Yeah.
Let it be noted.
Thank you. It's really tough to do 30 days of comment, a commission meeting, and submit it, but we are working really hard at it, at fitting all those extra days in the calendar.
No leap year until next year, so we don't get the extra day.
No.
Thanks, Alyssa.
Thank
Did
you.
you or Rory have any other PSC updates?
I think that's it for PSM updates. Maybe I can talk a little bit about next steps and where we're headed, Chris.
You bet.
All right, so certainly just a mountain of things going on here at the commission, and we really hope you do take a moment to listen in, flip through, maybe not the whole volume 2 proposal, but at least some key parts coming into December. Just the way the scheduling works among PSC staff and other members on our team, we don't think it's possible to pull off a December meeting at this point. So a little bit, we're taking this opportunity with Mark coming onto our team and providing a lot more support to the task force. We're going to take December to do a little bit of a reset in terms of the scheduling and kind of day-to-day operations of the task force. So I think, you know, please keep an eye out over the next couple of weeks. Mark is going to be reaching out to each of you to see kind of just a regular month, kind of what availability works best for task force meetings. I know certainly we've traditionally done kind of Wednesday afternoons, usually a second or third Wednesday of the month, but we'll have Mark reach out and do a little bit of a survey to see where folks are at. So please keep an eye on that. Expect that coming our way. And then we'll hopefully shortly after that kind of send out a planned meeting date for January and then going forward. So in terms of that, we don't really have a next formal task force meeting date, but please don't be strangers heading into the holidays. We are happy to have any conversation or have you get to know Mark a little bit more as we move forward.
All right, thanks, Rory. We have nothing else on the agenda. Any last comments before we adjourn for the day? I appreciated the discussion during the presentations. That's always great to hear perspectives. So thank you for that. And if we don't interact, or if I'm late to the next meeting, if we have one in December, have a good holiday season. It's hard to imagine that's here already, but I guess it is. Thank you for all your time today. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody.
Take
Thanks,
care.
all.
Happy holidays.
Everyone.